places.
I found you, Faker.
Faker? I think you're the fake
Predator
around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Huh? You're not even good enough to be
I'll
my
make you
fake.
eat those words.
There's no time to play games. You won't even get the chance.
So today I went to go see The Predator. Not Predator or Predators, but The Predator, the new one by Shane Black. Now, I love Predator. I mean, who doesn't? It's one of the greatest action movies of all time. Because it's so simple, but it's so well executed. Just take a bunch of big beefy dudes, put them in the forest, blow some shit up, they're being hunted by an alien, bing bang boom, get to the chopper, everybody's happy. I mean, who doesn't like Predator, right? And then you got Predator 2, which is weird. It's a weird movie, but it's got kind of its own identity, you know? It's definitely not bad. I mean, it's okay, it's kind of bad, but it's its own thing, you know what I mean? And you got Alien vs. Predator 1 and 2, which are both just utter shit, but it's entertaining shit, you know? Like, you could put it on, get drunk with some friends, have a good evening. And Predators, it's fine. It's forgettable. It has some cool stuff in there, but, you know, it's alright. It's a perfectly okay movie. So you might say that out of all these movies, the first one is the only one that you'd really consider good. I mean, they're all definitely watchable, at least, in their own way. Some of them, unironically, and others, yeah, not so much. And I feel like that's kind of the way with this new one, The Predator 2. I mean, not Predator 2, but you know what I'm talking about. The new one, Predator 4. 4? Yeah, 4. This one. It's not a good movie, alright? It's really fucking dumb. Like, it might be the dumbest out of all of them. If we're gonna count Alien vs. Predator and Alien vs. Predator Requiem, I mean, those are definite contenders for the stupidest one in this series, but The Predator, oh boy, this is a promising young newcomer when it comes to sheer, unadulterated stupidity. And I want to get into why that is, so I'm going to discuss the entire plot of this movie. Spoilers ahead, so be warned. Not that it really goes to any place that you wouldn't expect it to. This whole thing was pretty predictable, and I didn't even read the leaked script that ended up on the internet a couple months ago. So, the way this movie opens up, it opens up like you'd expect a Predator movie to open, you know? With a spaceship heading to Earth. There's a Predator ship getting chased by another Predator ship. It ends up going through a little warp gate thing, and it crashes in South America somewhere. And this is where we find our main character, who is Boyd Holbrook. I can't be asked to remember anybody's names. All these characters are so fucking forgettable. I can't remember anybody's names. But you have Boyd Holbrook, who I actually kind of like. I thought he was pretty decent in Logan, even though he kind of got overshadowed by everybody else in Logan. But I think movies like this are a good fit for him, and that's not meant to be an insult, as much as it might sound like one. He's not just playing generic army guy in this movie. He's also got to be a dad when he's on screen with his kid, and I think that duality leads to a couple of kind of fun character moments. So he's fine. He's an alright leading man. I remember hearing this was supposed to be Benicio del Toro, and yeah, I don't think that would have worked for this kind of character at all, as much as I love Benicio del Toro. So the Predator lands right in the middle of Boyd Holbrook's assassination detail, and naturally they have a little fight, and he's able to incapacitate the Predator because he's all rattled up from, you know, his ship crashing. He doesn't have all of his gear on. So yeah, Boyd Holbrook beats the Predator pretty easily, leaves it lying there, and he knows he needs to get the fuck out of Dodge. You know, the black helicopters are already circling. He's seen some shit that he is not supposed to have seen. So he grabs the mask, he grabs the little gauntlet, stuffs it in his backpack, and he's off. And he ends up in this little Central American town, and he bribes a guy to send the mask and gauntlet to his P.O. box back in America before he gets picked up by the government. So then we cut to, I guess, Georgia, where Boyd Holbrook's family live. And we find out that apparently he didn't make his payments on his P.O. box, so it all got just rerouted to his house. And all this Predator weaponry not only makes it through the U.S. Postal Service, whom I'm gonna assume scans things before they mail them. I don't know, maybe. Especially if it's international mail, but, you know, whatever. And it ends up in the hands of Boyd Holbrook's, like, 12-year-old autistic son, who thinks that it's, like, a video game at first, because he's got Asperger's, so that means that he's super brilliant. He's a genius when it comes to computers, and he can learn languages just by looking at them. And yeah, it feels like kind of to autism what like the magic Negro trope is to black people. You know, like, I feel this kid is a protagonist, of course, but I feel like you wouldn't point to this as like a positive representation of people with autism or Asperger's in a movie. You know, it'd kind of be the equivalent of like putting on Song of the South and being like, see, Uncle Remus is a positive portrayal of a black person. All the kids love him. Look at how friendly and jolly he is. He's got all these stories. When in reality, it's like, you know? And I mean, if you're going to have an autistic character like this, that's fine. Just don't make them a plot device. And that's all this kid is he's a plot device. But we'll get into that later, because boy, oh boy, it gets worse as the movie goes on. So this kid ends up with the Predator's gear, and then we end up with Olivia Munn, who is still, god damn it, they're still trying to convince us she's an actress. Yeah, she's not great here. Shocker. Is there a movie where Olivia Munn is any good? I feel like there has to be one, but this isn't it. So she is like a biologist, and she gets picked up by Gary Busey's son, which is a fun little cameo. Because remember, Gary Busey was in Predator 2, so this is his son. Get it? They're all the same universe. Ooh. So she ends up getting taken to a government lab because apparently she wrote a letter to the president when she was 5 saying that she wanted to work on animals, and if they ever found a space animal, they should contact her. And I don't know, I guess it paid off, because, yeah, they contact her. They found a space animal. And it's the Predator. They've got him chained to a table and sedated underneath a big dam. So she goes there and is looking at the Predator, and this is where we get our first, like, groan-worthy callback to the first movie, where she looks at the Predator and she goes, "You are one beautiful motherfucker." Yeah, it's not great. But it is much better than the other callback we get later on, and I'll get to that in a bit. So she's at this underground lab looking at the Predator, and they find out that it's got human DNA in it. So, yeah, the Predator is part human now. Trust me, it gets dumber. Meanwhile, the big Predator that was chasing this Predator in the opening of the movie finally finds his way to Earth, just as Boyd Holbrook's autistic kid figures out what the gauntlet does. That's the thing. He is so autistic, he's so smart, that he is able to reverse engineer alien technology and, like, install it on his computer. And he figures out what everything is in, like, an evening, like in an afternoon of fiddling around with a Predator mask and gauntlet. He figures out what it is. And so he ends up using the gauntlet to control the crashed Predator ship, which has this ominous, like, casket on it. It's got this little pod with something inside of it. And they keep teasing it and pretending like you're gonna forget about it, even though the camera keeps lingering on it whenever we're seeing the inside of the ship. So the crash ship is flying around, and the new Predator ship is flying around, and this wakes up the Predator on the table. I guess he knows that someone's fucking with his car. It's like Brock Sampson. And he just purges all the anesthetic out of his system and wakes up and starts fucking up all the scientists. And this part was actually pretty great. I like this part of the movie. The first half of this movie is really good. I mean, not really good, but it's good. It's a fun Predator movie. I liked it a lot, actually. Despite how stupid it gets later, the first part of this movie is very good. So meanwhile, while all this is going down, we find out what's happened to Boyd Holbrook. He ends up getting psych-evaled/interrogated by the government, and their plan is basically to send him to a VA mental hospital, you know, to get lobotomized or executed, to get disappeared, basically, for seeing too much. And he ends up loaded on a bus with all of our other tertiary characters who are going to become the main group that faces off against the Predator. You remember how memorable the main group of characters were in Predator 1?
Bunch of slack-jawed faggots around here. This stuff will make you a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus. Just like me.
Yeah, that's not the case this time around. These guys are all bland as fuck. And most of them are really just there for comedic relief, which, to the movie's credit, it kind of works as an outright comedy. A lot of the violence is really slapsticky, and pretty much all the tension is getting undercut by really, really corny jokes. Most of them coming from Keegan-Michael Key, but whatever. None of these guys really have arcs either. It's just guys with different disabilities, and I get what they're getting at. There's a point here. There's an underlying theme in taking a kid with autism and a bunch of soldiers with Tourette's and PTSD and depression and whatnot, and sending them up against a genetically perfect killing machine. There's a theme there, because the Predator movies have always been about taking humans who are soft and squishy and mortal and putting them up against these unstoppable killing machines. The Predators are the ultimate hunters, but humans are the ultimate survivors. We're stubborn and tenacious and creative, and that's why Arnie always beats the Predator. That's why Danny Glover always beats the Predator. And Adrian Brody, and whoever the hell else fought the Predators. I don't fucking remember anything about Alien vs. Predator. You know, the Predators always lose, basically. Unless they team up with humans, in which case they still don't come out on top, really. Humans always win in these scenarios. Even if a fuck ton of them die, the last man standing is always a man, or a woman, or, you know, a human from Earth. So I get what Shane Black was trying to do here. It's just he does it really shittily, because all of these disorders, including the kid's autism, are conditional. And it would have been really interesting to see a slasher movie, an action movie, where you have the Predator, who is this cold, calculated beast that's always 2 steps ahead of our protagonists, going up against people who have an additional handicap, no pun intended, to work with. You know, Thomas Jane's character has Tourette's, so he's constantly coming up with outbursts. And imagine a scene where they're trying to hide from the Predator, and then suddenly he has a tic, and the Predator spots them, and maybe somebody dies, and now Thomas Jane just has to live with that. You know, that'd be interesting from a character standpoint. You don't really see stuff like that in horror movies or in sci-fi, or especially not in action movies, where characters have disabilities that they need to overcome. But instead, it's just, oh, he says, fuck shit pussy, whenever it's funny, for a funny joke, because swearing is funny. And then, like, 2/3 of the way through the movie, I think they forgot that his character was supposed to have Tourette's, because he doesn't do it anymore. Unless that's, like, symbolic. Like he's back to being a hunter because he has to fight the Predator, so his Tourette's magically disappeared. Like, you see what I mean when I say this isn't exactly a positive portrayal of mental illness? But anyway, so they're all in the same place. The Predator is escaping from the facility, and Boyd Holbrook and his team of loonies end up taking over the bus so that they can escape, because Boyd Holbrook realizes that the alien he saw is the same one that's tearing up the facility, and he wants to go fucking kill it. So, alright, we get a pretty cool action sequence where the Predator just fucking rips its way through a bunch of scientists. There's a part where the Predator uses a gun, like a human gun, and it's awesome. It's so fucking great. I love this scene. It's the best scene in the movie, really. If we're being honest here, the Predator is just mowing people down like they were made out of craft paper, and it is great. There's a lot of blood. It's exactly what I would want from a modern Predator movie, especially from one that doesn't really aspire to be anything more than just a schlocky monster movie. Meanwhile, Olivia Munn decides to chase it down with a dart gun because she doesn't want it to get away, but she also steals a little vial of Predator juice that Gary Busey's son had extracted from it in the laboratory because she wanted to study it. And because of this, the government is planning to kill her. Which, I mean, what would have happened if the Predator didn't break out? Would they have used her to find out what the Predator was and then killed her because she'd seen too much? Or do they just want revenge for taking their vial of juice? I don't really know, but it seems like kind of a bad business model if you're just gonna disappear everybody who helps you. So Boyd Holbrook and his guys end up rescuing her, and this is where we get the worst part of the entire movie. The Predator has destroyed their bus, the government is closing in, they need to escape, and they're looking around for something that they can take, and what do they see but a bunch of motorcycles? And that's when one of the guys points to them and says,
Now, get to the chopper.
"Ugh, fuck. It was just the worst. It's so bad. It's terrible." So then all the characters end up at a motel, you know, to blend in. It's that scene where they're on the run from the government, so all the characters are hiding out in a seedy motel. And we get lots of goofy, wacky comedy, because none of these soldiers know how to deal with a lady. Whoopsie-doo. Ooh, boy. The wackiness. And if I'm going to be honest, I've already completely fucking forgotten what even happens in this scene. I literally saw this movie, not even 6 hours ago, and I've already forgotten this chunk of the film. That's how boring it was. It was just shitty attempts at comedy. There's this excruciating scene where they're at the motel, and Olivia Munn is trying to leave because she's freaked out by this whole situation. And Thomas Jane has this little Tourette's tick where he's like, eat your pussy. And Olivia Munn's like, did you just say eat my pussy? And Thomas Jane goes, no, I said, geez, you're pushy. And she goes, no, you said eat my pussy. And it's like, fucking kill me already. Just stop. I can't take this much shtick. And it goes on and on and on. But yeah, no, I honestly forget what the fuck happens. But they end up going back to Boyd Holbrook's house for some reason, because he doesn't know that the Predator gear was sent there. He figures it out when he gets home. So they end up going back, and he figures out that his kid has access to the Predator gear, and it's Halloween. So how's about a fun scene on Halloween? You know, there's a killer alien walking around. So maybe you have that scene where people think that it's a guy in a costume or something. That'd be great. And we almost get that. We get a kind of fun Halloween scene where the kid is getting picked on by his bullies from school, who like to make fun of him because he has Asperger's. And they tease like he's gonna use the Predator tech to blow them up. But then this dude, this stoner, throws a fucking brick at the kid and nails him right in the back of the head for no fucking reason. This kid has the audacity to go trick-or-treating on Halloween, and this stoner whips a brick at an autistic child. It's like the most mean-spirited moment in the entire movie, and it comes out of nowhere. And then the kid turns around and fucking blasts the stoner. I mean, the kid doesn't do it, the mask does it for him. But yeah, the kid accidentally blows up a house and murders a man with the Predator tech, so that was pretty fun. But the explosion ends up attracting both Boyd Holbrook, who is understandably out there looking for his kid before the government gets to him, and the Predator. So then we get another kind of decent fight scene where the bigger Predator shows up, and he's got his Predator dogs. But this isn't the bigger Predator from Predators, and they're not the Predator dogs from Predators. I mean, Predators was like a soft reboot of Predator. Not The Predator, but Predator. And The Predator is like a soft reboot of Predators, which was a soft reboot of Predator. So this is a soft reboot of a soft reboot, because it takes all the ideas that we introduced in Predators, like a blood war between big predators and little predators, and predator hounds, and genetic mutation and modification and all that, and it just pretends like it didn't happen, like this is the first time we're seeing these ideas introduced. And it's like, motherfucker, I was one of the 12 people who watched Predators, so I know all this shit happened before. And all the Predator hounds and Predators were way cooler than the ones in this one. In this one, they're just boxers. They're just big ol' fucking pit bulls, but they have Predator masks on. It's so fucking stupid. It's like they told the design guy, hey, we need you to make some Predator dogs. So he just photoshopped a Predator head onto a dog's body as like a joke, and then he went, oh wait, you were serious? And that's the design they actually went with. And what's worse is one of the guys shoots one of them in the head. Like, they're two of them, and they explode one of them by feeding it a grenade. And it pops, and I swear to God, when it pops, it makes a fart sound. And then the other one, they shoot it point blank in the head, And this doesn't kill it. Instead, it lobotomizes it. So now it's like a cuddly puppy. It's a dog. It wants to play fetch and sniff at things. It just starts acting like an earth dog. And it's like, okay, did we really need like a comedic animal sidekick in this movie? In this movie about the fucking Predator? So the Predator that escaped the base is trying to get his gear back. And he finally does. He chases them down to the high school. And he's got Boyd Holbrook by the neck. And then we get that trailer bit where the big beefy Predator arm comes through the window. And oh boy, it's the new Predator. And this Predator is like a fucking alpha male. It's a Chad Predator. He looks like a Predator that like spends all his time at GNC picking out protein powder, you know? He's a big bad motherfucker. And he just murders the shit out of the default Predator. So now we're back to one Predator. I'm assuming that this Predator is the titular The Predator. Not the Predator, but the Predator. And it basically just lets them get away. Like, it doesn't really care. So they drive off in this camper to try and escape the government now. But this new Predator needs to know where the ship was. So he communicates back to whoever he reports to, his boss, I guess, and mentions that he's going to follow the humans because they'll know where the ship is. So they end up driving the camper to a farm, and they've got the kid there, and this is where Olivia Munn discovers that the juice that she stole from Gary Busey Jr. is spinal fluid from the Predator. And that science, blah, 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 the Predators are going from planet to planet, sampling DNA. That's why the Predators take the spines as trophies, because the spines have all kinds of DNA inside of them that they can then inject into their brains and use to modify themselves to become more appropriate hunters. That's the point of Predators taking the spines from their victims. So when the Predator took Billy's spine, it wasn't because, oh, he gave a good hunt. It was because Billy is so badass that the Predator was like, damn, I want that inside me. I want to be part Billy. So then the government shows up and starts interrogating everybody. And then we get this weird scene where Gary Busey Jr. is interrogating Olivia Munn, and the film pretends for like 30 seconds that it really had an environmental message this whole time. Because he's talking to her like, in a few years, global warming is going to kill the planet. It's going to kill everybody on the planet within like a generation. And that's why the Predators have been coming to Earth more and more frequently. Is because, and I shit you not, this is the metaphor the movie uses, mankind is like Twinkies. Because a couple years ago, they stopped making Twinkies. And everybody went out and went insane and bought tons and tons of Twinkies. So humans are like Twinkies for Predators. They want our delicious cream filling, so that they can inject themselves with alpha brain and become super big dick Chad Predators. So all the Predators are going to be coming to Earth to snatch up all the best goo in order to make themselves better hunters, because we won't be here in just a couple years because of climate change, at which point the Predators will just move in and make Earth their new homeworld. And apparently, the Predator that escaped the lab, the little, the virgin Predator from before, was actually a savior of humanity, despite mutilating countless soldiers and scientists. He actually came down to help us, and that what was in the pod, the ominous pod in his ship, is something that's going to help us stop the big alpha brain Predators. Meanwhile, the main government guy discovers that the kid is drawing a map to the ship. So, he's super smart, but common sense isn't exactly his strong suit. So they kidnap the kid and set off for wherever he landed the ship. Everybody escapes from the people that are interrogating them with the help of their cuddly Predator dog. And then they use the Predator dog to track the government and Boyd Holbrook's kid. And they take a helicopter to go and find the crashed ship site. And this is when the kid stops being like a believable autistic child and turns into like a little action hero. Like, he starts telling the main bad guy, like the main human bad guy, to like go fuck himself. Like, he starts coming up with one-liners, and they use him to get into the Predator ship. Like, he knows everything about the Predators now because he fiddled around with a mask. He can get into their ship. he can work their computers like it's nothing, because that's what autism is, apparently. And that's the thing that really bothers me about this character. It just left an uncomfortable taste in my mouth. Because in the first scene we see him, he's in the special ed classroom, like, playing chess with the other kids, and his two bullies decide to pull the fire alarm, like, as a prank. And it's not a drill, right? Like, somebody pulled the fire alarm. So as far as everybody's concerned, it's real. So everybody leaves the room in an orderly fashion. I don't know why the teachers didn't make sure all the kids were out of the classroom, but this kid curls up in a corner and, you know, starts having a fit because he doesn't like the noise. You know, he curls into a fetal position and starts, like, rocking back and forth because the noise is too much for him. And then, like, he's walking back from school and a dog, like, starts barking at him. And he kind of regresses a little bit too because he doesn't like the noise. He doesn't like the stress. And here he is getting fucking hunted by a predator, getting kidnapped by government agents who are pointing guns at him, and he's, like, smugly telling them to go fuck themselves. Like, okay, I guess it's not a problem for him anymore. I guess this kid isn't vulnerable. I guess Asperger's really is the next step in human evolution, and they keep fucking saying that. They keep fucking saying that Asperger's is the next step in human evolution. Like this kid's a member of the fucking X-Men because he has autism. So they all meet up at the crashed Predator ship. They have a little firefight. Boyd Holbrook gets his kid back, and they have kind of a Mexican standoff. And then sure enough, the big bad Predator shows up. And the action in this movie isn't spectacular. Like I said, the part where he escapes the lab, that's a good bit, but the rest of it is pretty mediocre. But you'll still get some fun kills. There's one bit in here that I really, really liked, where the Predator shoots like a grappling hook through a guy, and it attaches to like a truck. And then a jeep of soldiers comes by, and they all hit the wire like it's piano wire, and all their heads just go flying off. And it's shit like that, just goofy slapstick gore that this movie actually does fairly well. If you watch this like a comedy, it's actually a pretty decent comedy. So then the Predator gets into his ship, and he hijacks the translator that the government agents have hooked up to all of his gear, and I shit you not, he starts speaking English to all of them. He, like, hacks into a PA and goes, you know,
it's been very entertaining watching you all kill yourselves like children, but I want the whatever Boyd Holbrook's last name is. He is the true predator. He is an ultimate warrior, a true genetic freak, and I want to hunt him. You have 7 minutes.
So he gives them a little head start, and they all get armed and head off into the woods. Also, this has another winner of a line when the main government bad guy goes, "Motherfucker hacked our vehicles." Yeah, it's not a brilliant script. So they end up in the woods, and the Predator shows up and basically just annihilates all of them. This part was kind of fun just for how over the top it was. I mean, they dump fucking everything at this Predator, and it refuses to go down. Pretty much all of Boyd Holbrook's army buddies end up dying. Fucking Theon Greyjoy gets killed. Keegan-Michael Key and Thomas Jane end up shooting each other in the head as like a mercy killing. That moment was either like comically stupid or kind of badass. I really can't tell. It's like a horseshoe theory type thing. One end of the spectrum is really badass, the other end of the spectrum is fucking silly, and this moment just ping-ponged between the two. But eventually it comes down to Boyd Holbrook, Olivia Munn, and the kid. And Boyd Holbrook is about to sacrifice himself, because, you know, I'm the one that you want. And the Predator smacks him aside, and what a shock, the Predator wants the kid. Because autism makes him the ultimate survivor. This kid is the ultimate predator, because he has Asperger's syndrome. And the Predator says, you know,
He is going to be my prize.
And that's when you realize that the plot of this movie is literally about a predator trying to give himself autism. I shit you not, that's the plot of this movie. The predators want to inject themselves with autism to become super beings. So he takes the kid and locks him up in a little pod on his ship, and Boyd Holbrook goes to rescue his kid. He gets Olivia Munn and a couple of the other guys to help him. The other guys die when the Predator activates the force field around his ship, and one of them, the guy who tried to commit suicide, ends up feeding himself into the ship's engine, causing it to crash. And then we get our final fight, Boyd Holbrook against the Predator. You remember how when Arnie fought the Predator, there was like no dialogue, and it was the most intense primal thing ever? Yeah, this one's really lame and flaccid, and there's a lot of bad CGI, and it's happening at, like, dawn. So, like, the sun is kind of shining. It looks really pleasant. And they fucking kill it. They just blow it the fuck up. And apparently, in early drafts, this is the point where a helicopter would touch down, and fucking Dutch would get off the helicopter and go, "You need to come with me." And he would take Olivia Munn and Boyd Holbrook and the little autistic kid. And that's where the movie would end. But apparently Arnold Schwarzenegger read the script and said, no, thank you. I don't want to do your shitty movie. I want to smoke cigars and ride around in my tank. Thank you very much.
I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.
So, yeah. This movie's not up to the high standards of Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man who did like 3 Expendables movies. So then that's basically where the movie ends. They end up killing the Predator, and I assume the Predator dog either died in the explosion or just meanders off. And had the movie ended here, it would have been fine. It would have been just fine, you know? It would have reminded me of the ending to Predators, which I fucking love, but that's really more due to the credits than anything else. But it would have been a fine ending to an okay movie. But then we get one more scene where Boyd Holbrook goes to a government lab and meets this new character. And he says, "Oh, you know, how's it coming along?" And then we reveal that this kid is so smart, his autism is so powerful, that he now works for the government decrypting Predator technology. This, 10-year-old kid has a desk at an underground government agency hacking into alien technology. Okay, so he's fucking Dexter from Dexter's Lab. He's Jimmy Neutron now, okay? That's what autism is, as far as this movie is concerned. You remember that mysterious pod that was on the first Predator's ship? Oh, I bet you thought that it was lost when the big bad Predator blew it up, didn't you? Well, surprise, it's still there. It managed to eject itself, almost like it wanted to save itself. The pod that was supposed to help humanity, oh boy, what could be inside? And we see that it's inside this big room, and a bunch of scientists are poking at it. And the kid is hacking into the pod to try and open it. And then all of the lights start going haywire. And the kid looks at the screen and he goes, "It has a name." And he's like, "What is it, son?" And the kid goes, "I guess you could call it the Predator Killer." And things start popping off. It starts shooting off sparks. And a bunch of soldiers start training their guns on it. And this is when my heart started beating. And I went, oh fuck, that pod is going to open up. And a fucking xenomorph is going to come out of it. That's what's going to happen. It's totally what's going to happen. This is a 20th Century Fox film. They got the rights to both of them. It's going to tease Alien vs. Predator, but done right in the next one. And the pod opens up, and there's a bunch of black goo in it. I went, fuck yeah, it's going to be a face hugger or an alien or something. And then this little device comes out. And it kind of looked almost like the little harness from Alien Resurrection that they used to hold on to the chest bursters. And I went, oh, okay, what is this? And a scientist walks up to it, and it snaps onto his wrist. And then it proceeds to build a fucking Iron Man suit around him. Like, you remember those Kenner Predator action figures that had, wacky abilities? And, one of them was, the Lava Predator, and one of them had, whipping dreadlocks. It builds a suit that looks like a combination of all of those action figures around him. He's got assault rifles mounted on his shoulders. And then you realize that that's what the Predator was bringing. It was bringing a suit of Predator armor. And then Boyd Holbrook gets this look on his face, and I shit you not, the movie ends on a "we're gonna take the fight to them" cliffhanger sequel tease. And then I sat through the entire credits and got fucking nothing. So, yeah, that's The Predator. It's stupid, it's forgettable, and I mean, it's not, like, insultingly bad. Like, it's not like Prometheus or Alien Covenant. Those movies were fucking dumb, but they thought they were brilliant. This movie is fully aware of how dumb it is. Except for the parts where you can tell it's really trying to have subtext. By taking an autistic kid and a bunch of soldiers, all with mental disorders, and putting them up against a predator who has experimented on his own DNA to become the ultimate life form. A predator Ubermensch. It thinks it's so clever when it's teasing this subtext. And I'll admit, that's a pretty clever fucking idea. But at the same time, the execution is just piss poor. This movie could have really been something interesting, but the script just isn't there. It's painfully generic, it's really forgettable, chunks of it are fucking boring. It's a movie about a bunch of bland humans who are on the run from the government, and occasionally a predator shows up and tries to inject himself with autism. That's what the movie is. And then it ends by teasing that the next one is basically going to be a Marvel movie. With, like, power armor and probably big action scenes where a bunch of predators have to fight Boyd Holbrook in his predator suit. And they blow up real good. There's lots of badass weapons. And lots of explosions. We're never going to get moments like this in a Predator movie, ever again. It's just going to be more shared universe annual sequel schlock. Hell, it's already on track to beat The Nun at the box office, and those Conjuring movies print fucking money. So, fuck it, this is what Predator is now. Hell, now that Disney owns 20th Century Fox, maybe the fact that they don't plan on doing anything that isn't marketable to children isn't such a bad thing after all.
Billy! Billy! The other day, I was going down to my girlfriend. I said to her, "Jeez, you got a big pussy. Jeez, you got a big pussy." She said, "Why did you say that twice?" And I said, "I didn't." See, it's because of the echo. Where the...